Thank you everyone for joining me today in Montreal to address a very critical issue that threatens the very core of humanity, the protection of the most vulnerable in cyberspace. And I will be speaking about humanitarian organizations today. Humanitarian organizations provide essential services to those in need of assistance, especially in conflict zones and disaster-stricken areas. In a world where over 1 billion of people need assistance of these organizations, vital support which they can provide, these organizations leverage technologies to extend the help that they can provide. Digital transformation enabled humanitarian organizations to reach more people, offer vital services at scale, and collect data to understand the needs on the ground. But at the same time, digital transformation comes at a cost. The very technologies that allow NGOs to be more effective are being exploited against them and against their beneficiaries. And in the last years, we saw that cyber criminals and state actors have accessed systems and personal records, stolen millions of dollars of donations, carried out surveillance operations, and led disinformation campaigns against these NGOs to the point that they were unable to operate effectively. Recent cyber attacks have affected both humanitarian organizations which are large, such as United Nations bodies or International Committee of the Red Cross, and small NGOs. And I will give you an example of a cyber attack which affected Roots of Peace. It's an NGO working in remote landmines areas, and it's trying to repurpose those former landlines for agricultural land. Their aim is to allow people to replant crops in disaster-stricken and war-stricken areas. And the attack on this organization, which it experienced, led to a financial loss of over $1 million as threat actors tricked the employees to transfer money. So this is one of the many testimonials we have collected at the Cyber Peace Institute. And this is only a fragment of the actual damage which is caused by cyber attacks to the humanitarian organizations. At the same time, cyber attacks can lead to increased humanitarian needs. For example, if critical infrastructure, so these vital parts of infrastructure and services, which is essential for the population, is targeted by destructive or disruptive attacks. So these can compromise the provision of the power supplies, healthcare and clean water and food supplies to the people, especially for vulnerable people which are in disaster-stricken areas or war-stricken areas. And ultimately, cyber attacks against humanitarian NGOs leave vulnerable people to be even more vulnerable, both physically and online. So my question today, and coming back to the top, is how we can protect those organizations. How we can protect humanitarian action in cyberspace so it can deliver the help to the people in need. At the Cyber Peace Institute, which I have the pleasure to represent, we believe in the power of collective effort to protect humanitarian organizations. And we have acted by providing cybersecurity support, which is free for humanitarian development NGOs, and advocating for the increased protection in policy arenas around the world. So first of all, I will start with the very practical support that the Institute is introducing and currently scaling up to offer it worldwide. Through our flagship program, Cyber Peace Builders, we have offered support to over 178 NGOs globally. This program matches corporate donors and volunteers with organizations in need, and today includes 656 volunteers and 44 international companies which have generously pledged to support NGOs. Our volunteers have run phishing simulations, dark web monitoring, vulnerability scans, security assessment, and raised cybersecurity awareness among the staff of humanitarian NGOs. And by identifying the vulnerabilities that attackers exploit and alerting NGOs to these risks, this program helps to prevent future attacks. We have been able to analyze the impacts of a number of incidents on the humanitarian sectors, and importantly, witness and evidence the vulnerability of small non-governmental organizations. While they have similar problems as other small and medium enterprises, NGOs are structurally prone to be disadvantaged to invest in cybersecurity. There are several factors to the increased vulnerability, and these are, for example, donor preferences and requirements, which limit them to invest into cybersecurity, and instead they have to channel all the donations to practical aid they offer. It's also a very fluid workforce made of volunteers, which is very difficult for controlling data and access to data. And also it can be very difficult to implement zero trust architectures in low connectivity environments where these small organizations often operate. So overall, NGOs often lack cybersecurity capabilities to both understand the trend landscape and put in place adequate measures to protect themselves, to respond to an attack, and to regain the resilience from attack and the needed recovery. As a result, many are affected by simple, oftentimes automated cyber attacks. In many of these attacks which exploited NGOs, attackers didn't even know that they are attacking humanitarian organizations. When it comes to the remedy, we already have some in place, but it's not sufficient because many available free or low-cost cybersecurity resources, such as guidelines and trainings and technological solutions, are not equipped for the specific needs of humanitarian action. And what we need is the last-mile expertise, the targeted support for organizations to bring these resources to the organizations and build NGOs' cyber resilience. So recognizing the growing and diverse needs of the humanitarian sector, CyberPeace Institute launched the Humanitarian Cybersecurity Center. This center offers tailored support for NGOs that is available throughout our partnerships across other civil society actors, across human rights organizations, and across private companies. At the same time, it contributes to better understanding of the threat landscape and challenges that malicious cyber activities pose to humanitarian organizations. And now I'm coming to something which is absolutely close to my heart, because it's the policy aspect of how the CyberPeace Institute helps humanitarian organizations. We have called on states to protect humanitarian action in cyberspace through the available legal and policy frameworks. We've taken the evidence we have collected at the Institute and the expertise we have acquired to the multilateral fora to speak to the countries. And we have taken it to fora such as the United Nations to advocate for increased protection of the most vulnerable in cyberspace. We continuously ask governments to affirm that humanitarian organizations, their staff and their data must not be targets of cyber attacks. We also ask them to adapt the international legal and normative frameworks which already exist to offer adequate protection for humanitarian organizations, for example, as part of critical infrastructure. And we also ask them to help in building their cyber capacity and resilience, because these organizations who help the most vulnerable in practice are the ones who often stay left behind. When it comes to humanitarian data, we believe that it should be recognized as a civilian object under the international humanitarian law, and that it must not be breached, manipulated, or destroyed through cyber attacks. In the closing, I would like to highlight the cyber attacks against the humanitarian sector demonstrate a clear disregard for life and for dignity of people. Protection of these organizations is imperative to ensure support for those who rely on humanitarian aid. And these people are often the most vulnerable in the most desperate kind of conditions around the world, where they need the humanitarian aid that these organizations can support and provide for them. What is important, and what is my message today, is that our collective efforts can make a significant difference in protecting the most vulnerable in cyberspace. Together, we can build a more resilient, secure, and safer digital environment. Thank you very much for your attention.